Good morning, 8th graders. So this is your how-to for the 6.3.2 choice activity, building Pangaea puzzle. When you get this, you need to make sure you have this packet, which is 2 pages front and back, and then there's also the actual puzzle pieces here on the back. So make sure you have this, plus you will need a piece of construction paper or colored paper to paste it all onto in the end. So just make sure you have that. I don't currently have that. Not a big deal for me, but for you it will be. So let's go through this. So you will be piecing together a puzzle of the supercontinent Pangaea based on the fossil and rock evidence on the present day continents. First, on the puzzle piece handout, which is the back page, assign a color to each type of fossil or mountain belt in the legend and color the area of the land masses according to the legend. It is very important that you do this first, just for the sake of once you start cutting these out, some of the pieces get rather small and it's just not worth the hassle. And you don't want to potentially lose something by cutting them out first, coloring them, and not getting them all pasted down. So first things first, you are going to color. Okay. 2, use scissors to cut along the border of the continents. It does not need to be perfect. These are the approximate shapes of the continents after Pangaea broke up. So you'll notice that we went through and we put this bolded line around each of the continents. That's where you're going to cut. Okay, and I'll show you like a quick little thing of that here toward the end. But that. Number 3, place the continents on a piece of construction paper and move them around using the fossil and mountain chain evidence to match the continents together in the position they were in when they were a part of Pangaea. The pieces may not fit together exactly. Nothing will be perfect. Okay, so for number 3, you are not gluing yet. Okay, you're not gluing at this point in time. You're just setting them on the paper so that it's easier to see, and you're moving them around as necessary. Number 4, when you have assembled Pangaea based on the fossil and rock location, glue the continents onto your construction paper in the shape of the supercontinent. Glue the legend on the puzzle as well. Okay, so this is when you'll glue it. It's after you have them all laid out, and then what I like to do is just kind of like lift up the flap, put a little glue, and back down. Okay, don't forget your legend. So let's go through this a little bit. So this is our, these are our continents. There are 7 different items on each of these puzzle pieces. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go through and you're going to want to assign colors to each of these different items. So the European is purple. Sorry, that's hard to see. I'm going to make the Glossopteris plant green. All this. These are just the colors that I had in my jar here at home, but you feel free to use whatever colors you have available. Plus, if you're doing this in class, you should have the availability to colored pencils and markers and whatnot. So that. Okay, so that. Now, as you're going through this, okay, make sure that you are looking specifically at what the symbols are. The European flora and the Galostropius plant are kind of difficult to identify the difference of. So I'm going to just work with the Glossopia. I'm going to see if I can bring this down a little bit more for you so it's a little bit easier to see. So you'll notice the Glossopia stays more towards what we know as the southern like portions of continents now. So we have it going across Africa, a little bit into Australia, a little bit in South America. But then as I go up, we don't see anything again until Antarctica. Okay? that. I'm going to color these in. I'm not going to go too heavy because I still want to be able to kind of see the fossil underneath, but you should be hopefully using more so colored pencils, so this should be easier to see through. Okay. So you're going to do this with all 7 of the items on the legend. Okay, and like I said, make it pretty. You guys have time to do this. I don't want to take up your time, things like that. Okay. Now we talked about mountain and fossil evidence, but we went through and we added glacial scratches as well. So you'll notice those in the arrows. So I'm just going to highlight over these just so you can kind of see where they're at. Okay, a lot of it is more so in our southern hemisphere again, but I'm just going to go over like that because you would potentially have all of your fossil and mountain evidence already kind of figured out. So this is just basics right now. Okay, so that would be if we're going to call this good for me, you need to color all of these, not just what I've done. Okay, so then using scissors, cut along the border. So the border is simply just this dark space. So I'm going to cut out my legend and I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to make sure I don't lose that because that does need to go onto my construction paper. Okay, so I'm going to set that there. And then just off camera, super quick, I'm also going to just pause it so that it's not weird. But I am just going to cut out a couple of these pieces quick and then I'll show you how to kind of manipulate them. Okay, so for the sake of time, I have just cut out Africa, South America, and Australia, and the legend, just so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm trying to explain with all this. Okay, so now this isn't exactly how it goes together. Keep in mind, it's all about how you are interpreting these different fossils. So this would be after step 2. So use the scissors to cut along the borders. I just cut along the borders the best that I could. It's not going to be perfect anyhow, but you'll notice I didn't get all up into each of these like little crevices. I just kept it super duper simple because you don't need anything bigger than, or anything like more detailed than this. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the continents. We're going to pretend like this is my construction paper and move them around using the fossil and mountain chain evidence to match the continents together. So what I'm going to be doing is I am going to be looking at my colors. Okay, you should have all of these kind of colored in. I'm going to look at my glacial evidence and I'm going to see I have green here and I have green here. I have, this would be my blue in the end. So if I would have had this like colored in, see how obnoxious this is to hold this little piece while I try to color in just this little bit. Okay. So that, as well as these bright pink Lystrosaurus technically are going along here as well. Okay, so I would be trying to line up my pinks, my greens, and my blues at this point in time. Okay, so that, and then this one is the Senegith. I don't know. There are some terms I just can't. Okay, but that is this dusty pink for me. Okay, so I'm going to try to fit each of these colors together. Now they're not going to be perfect. Things are going to look weird, but this is generally, see, I tried to line up this green one, but that just doesn't work because then it doesn't line up with my glacial evidence. So maybe it goes more like that to go with my glacial evidence. We'll have to see. I am missing a continent that should be around here, okay? But you're going to try to pair these up to the best of your abilities. And then when you're satisfied with this, I would just hold it, lift up the edge, throw some glue down, and then paste it onto your construction paper. Remember that the legend needs to also go onto your construction paper with the rest of your supercontinent. Okay. Now again, I just did these couple quick. You need to make sure you get all of these done and combined together. Okay. So that after you're done with that, I'm going to just slide this off to the side for now. Get rid of my scraps. Then you're going to come through and you are going to answer these 5 questions. So what is the idea of continental drift? Which 2 continents have the most obvious fit based off of their coastlines? How were the fossil symbols and mountain belts helpful in deciding where to move the continents? Things like that, okay? So take your time with these, answer them in complete sentences, especially when, like, what is the idea of continental drift? Or which fossils and the land masses and all this or whatnot. And then if you turn this over, this may look somewhat familiar. But you're going to read the statement. You are going to determine whether it is evidence or not. Remember, evidence is like empirical data. Numbers typically really, really help. Things like that. And then identify whether does this support the idea of continental drift or not. Okay? It could be evidence, but it may not support it. It is your job to go through and identify these. Okay? In the end, you will have this paper, because these should be cut out, these paper, and then your colored construction paper with your map on it. Let's get this more in view. Okay? You will staple those 2 pieces together and get them turned in appropriately. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask your teachers, and we are happy to help. Awesome. Thank you, 8th graders.